Hi everyone and welcome to the AE Tech Airsoft channel. In this series of videos we're going over the VFC MP5 GBB disassembly. And in this particular video we're going to cover removing and disassembling the inner and outer barrel assembly as well as the hop-up chamber unit for either repair or to install upgrade parts. So as always, a quick overview of the tools we're going to use in this video. I'm going to be using a 2mm Thorpe hex driver. You can use a 2mm Allen key, a 2.5mm hex driver, or you could use a 2.5mm Allen key, a pair of pliers. We're going to use some Loctite. I like to use the 243, which is the medium strength. We're going to need a heat gun like this. We're going to need a couple of microfiber towels to use to hold some of the parts and do some cleaning. And then I'm not shown here is I'm also going to be using a vise with some polyurethane soft jaws meant for holding gun barrels, and that's going to help us with the disassembly process quite a bit. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay guys, so the first step in removing the VFC outer inner barrel assembly as well as the hop-up unit is going to be to remove the muzzle. So what you're going to want to do is get a microfiber towel or another towel and wrap it around the muzzle like this, just so you don't scratch it. And then we can take our pair of pliers here and we can grip around the towel and we can loosen the muzzle device. With this particular Tri-Lug adapter, you're going to want to spin clockwise. So you're going to want to turn it around this way to the right. So I've already gone ahead and loosened this, so you can see it's going to spin off the opposite of how most threads do. So this is a left-handed thread. We're turning it clockwise, we'll loosen it, and that will let us remove our 3-lug adapter. And then in the next section we can go on to the next step. So with the Tri-Lug adapter removed, we can remove the sling mount right here, and this should just spin out. So it might be a little bit tight. So as you can see, that just sort of rotates out of the receiver like that. We can set it aside. So with the sling mount removed, the next step is going to be to remove these two set screws from either side of the outer barrel assembly. So one of them is located right here, and the other one's 180 degrees away on this side of the receiver. And I'm just going to use my 2.5mm driver here. You can use a 2.5mm Allen key. These drivers are very nice though. You will never strip out any of your screws again with these guys. And I'm just going to spin these out. There we go, that's removing the two set screws, and with those out, we should be able to remove our outer barrel. As you can see here, just going to slide it right out the back of the receiver. And now we can put the receiver aside, and we can work with just this barrel assembly. Okay guys, so now that we've got the barrel assembly removed from our MP5, the next step is going to be to break the Loctite free that holds this cast aluminum outer barrel to the hop-up chamber. So I'm going to use my heat gun here, and I'm going to heat up this zone and get it nice and warm. And then I'm going to put this into my barrel vise that I have downstairs with the soft jaws, and I'm going to use that to spin off the outer barrel so that I hopefully don't scratch anything or damage any of the parts. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to come back and look at the results. Okay guys, so we're back upstairs. So as you saw in the previous segment, I was able to install the barrel into my vise with the barrel clamp soft jaws. And then I just heated around here a couple times for about 2 minutes or so to warm up the barrel and break the Loctite free. And I was very easily able to grab the top of the microfiber towel and just spin this off and loosen it. Having the right tools makes this quite an easy job. So next, before I spin this off all the way, there's a spring and detent in here that controls the hop-up wheel. So we want to make sure those don't go flying. So I'm just going to hold some pressure on that, and then I'm going to finish spinning off this outer barrel. Should come right off here. Yep, here we go. Set that aside. And now I'm just going to relax off of the hop-up wheel. And that can come off as well. And then we can remove this spring and detent from the hop-up chamber halves. So in the next segment, we're going to take this apart, and that should complete the disassembly. Okay guys, so for this next segment, we're going to remove the hop-up chamber halves. So I've got a 2mm Thorpe driver here. You can use a 2mm Allen key. Again, these are really nice with hardened ground tips. They will not strip, and will probably get bolts out that you thought were stripped because they're ground so precisely. But anyway, I'm going to remove these two bolts. There we go, those bolts are removed, and now we should be able to separate the hop-up chamber halves very gently. There we go. There's one half, and here's the other half, and I should be able to just take out all of my internal components. So we've got our barrel with the bucking installed here. We've got our feed ramp. So this thing looks like it could use a bit of a cleaning. And then we have the other hop-up chamber half with the hop-up adjustment arm right here. So I'm going to remove those, and then we can slip our bucking off the back of the inner barrel. And that completes the disassembly of the VFC MP5 GBB inner outer barrel assembly. So at this point, you should be ready to install your upgraded hop-up rubber or replacement inner barrel or any other upgrades or replacement parts. And next we'll focus on reassembly. Okay guys, so I'm going to start reassembly now. Just one quick note is I went ahead and took a Q-tip and a microfiber towel and just wiped out all the BB residue from my feed ramp, from inside the hop-up chamber halves and around the bucking here. There was some BB shards and residue from firing and playing with my MP5, so you just want to take the opportunity while you've got it all apart to just clean all that out. Once you've got it cleaned out, we can start the reassembly process. So the first step is going to be to take the hop-up arm here, and we're going to load that back into the hop-up chamber onto this dowel pin, just like so. Next, I'm going to take the inner barrel and bucking, and we're going to slide the bucking back over the inner barrel until it snaps on, with the nub here facing towards the 3 o'clock position when viewed from the rear, so pointing at these two slots. Once we've got that done, I'm going to take my feed ramp, I'm going to pre-position it along the side of the bucking, and then we should be able to just load that right back into the hop-up chamber here. Yep, right there. And I am making sure to align the slots cut into the barrel in these two locations with the bosses in each location here on the hop-up chamber halves. So I can feel that the barrel's in that position, and if I hold it down and just kind of try to twist it, I can feel it's locked in position. So that looks good. Next, we're going to put the other chamber half over this side of the bucking and barrel, and it should go together pretty easily. Make sure we're lined up here. Oh, there we go. You probably heard it just clicked into place. And now with this assembly together, I'm going to flip it over while holding it compressed, and I'm going to reinstall our two screws here. Okay guys, so I've got my Loctite 243 and my 2mm Allen key or wrench over here, and we're just going to apply a little bit of Loctite onto the end of each of these bolts. Again, just to hold it together. This assembly does experience some vibration in use, so I'm just going to put just a little bit of Loctite on the end, rub it in the thread slightly, and and then we can go ahead and install it. Okay, and that's the 2 bolts reinstalled. I want to just point out again at the end there, when I was actually tightening the bolts, I was just grabbing this with 3 fingers. You really don't want to torque too hard here, or you could strip out the hop-up chamber. So you don't need a ton of torque. You can let the Loctite do its job. And now in the next segment, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the outer barrel. Okay guys, so the next step in the reassembly process is going to be to reinstall the spring and detent and hop-up wheel, the outer and the outer barrel here. To actually tighten down the outer barrel, I'm going to bring this assembly down to my vise with the soft jaws again, just so we don't scratch anything up and we can get it nice and tight. But the first part of the assembly I'm going to do up here on the bench. So I'm going to take some Loctite, and we're going to apply just a little bit here, probably a fraction of what VFC did. We don't need a whole lot, so I'm going to apply about that much. I'm just going to push it into the threads a little bit. And with that loaded on here, we can put our detent and spring in. So that drops into this little pocket in the bottom of the hop-up chamber, just like so. And now what we need to do is we're going to look at our hop-up wheel, and we can see on one side we've got this pocket cut into it, and the other side has these little detents. And the detents we want to engage with the plunger right here. And this pocket needs to, I'm just going to hold the detent, needs to sit over this nub that's cast into the hop-up chamber halves. So I'm just going to look at my alignment here, and we're going to slide the hop-up wheel over. And we want to just make sure that that pocket is lined up with this nub. Yep, just like that. Oh, and we want to make sure our detent doesn't get folded over. We want to push this straight down. So when it's fully assembled, it's going to look something like this. It should be flush all the way around. So I'm just holding this down for the moment, and I'm going to take our outer barrel, and we're going to look at this chamfered end, and that's going to go towards the hop-up chamber. And once I get that on, I can just start threading it down all the way. And once it gets close, I can stop holding that hop-up wheel, and you want to make sure that this doesn't spring out and either get lost or get bent as you're threading this down. And I'm just going to keep continuing to tighten it down. Okay, it just stopped right there. So now I'm going to go downstairs, put this in my vise. I'm going to clamp it like this. I'm going to grab the top with a microfiber towel, and I'm just going to crank it just a little bit more. I'm going to let the Loctite do most of the holding here, and that's going to finish up this assembly. So we'll be right back. Okay guys, so I went downstairs. I retorqued the outer barrel onto the hop-up chamber. So that's on with a little bit of Loctite, so we should be good to go. And the next step of reassembly is going to be to reinstall the barrel into our upper receiver. So we can take the barrel assembly, and just like we disassembled it, I'm going to slide it in from the rear with the hop-up unit facing down. Just like this. It should go very easily until it slides all the way through the receiver. And here we go. And I want to make sure your barrel lines up in the front here, and we're just going to keep gently pushing it forward. It shouldn't really take any force to get to this point where it's fully installed. Okay guys, so now that we've got the outer barrel assembly reinstalled, the next step is going to be to put the sling mount in. So I'm just going to take a little bit of Loctite and apply it to the sling mount here, just so that it doesn't loosen up. I'm just putting a very tiny amount, about this much. Just push it into the threads a little bit with my finger, and I'm going to start threading that into our front sight post here. And there we go. Generally, one note I should make here is I usually install this first, and then I reinstall the grub screws here in the rear. So now that this is installed, we can go ahead and take each one of these set screws, and again, apply just a little bit of Loctite, And I'm going to install it on both sides of the receiver again. Okay guys, so I just tightened both of those down. One thing I want to point out, as you're starting to thread these down, make sure that they're going in very easily. If you feel that the set screw is binding up within the first turn or 2 turns, I would back it out and see if you're going in at an angle by accident. You don't want to cross thread these. They should go down very, very easily until they're almost all the way threaded at the bottom. So be careful, don't strip your screws doing this, and we'll move on to the last step of reassembly. Okay guys, so the final step is going to be to reinstall our Tri-Lug adapter here. So I'm just going to take just a tiny bit of Loctite and apply it right onto this thread. Again, just a very tiny amount. Spread it around a little bit, so I only put on about that much, not very much at all. And then we're going to slide our adapter over. And remember, this is an anti-clockwise thread, so I'm going to turn this counterclockwise to tighten it. And this should spin down very easily. Almost no resistance until we get all the way to the bottom. Now, once we've got this bottomed out, I'm just going to grab my rag again. I'm going to wrap it around, and I'm going to use, put this down for a second, I'm going to use my pliers here to give it just a tiny bit more torque. Again, remembering to turn it anti-clockwise to tighten it. You don't need to go crazy on this. We're going to let the Loctite do most of the work holding it in place. And with that step complete, that should finish our reassembly. So we'll come back here in a second and take a look at the finished results. Okay guys, so I just finished using my towel and pliers to just give this just a little tiny more torque. Again, we're going to use the Loctite to mostly hold this in place. And that completes the reassembly. So removing the outer barrel and getting down to the hop-up chamber is fairly straightforward. The only tricky part, in my opinion, is that most people may not have is the vise and the barrel soft jaws. They really make this job go quick and easy. If you don't have those, you could wrap the barrel here in a towel and use some vise grips after applying some heat to the hop-up chamber to break it loose. But really, having a vise and the barrel soft jaws is going to make this a piece of cake to take apart and reassemble. This is pretty easy. So thanks again for watching the VFC MP5 GBB tech series. If you have any other video requests, please let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.